How's it going, YouTube? Coming in today with another video, and today, guys, the video is going to be where to hand trap in Justice Hunters format. Now, I'm not going to be going over a lot of the decks that we've already covered in other where to hand traps because nothing really has changed with those, but today we're going to be talking about the new Justice Hunter builds that we will be seeing moving forward, and I really do hope this video does help you because we're going to be talking about a lot of different nuances and things that you really got to pay attention to this format. So definitely go ahead and check out my sponsors over in RW, Cloud, Gem, Arla, Imperium, Dragonshield, and Grimoire. But if you also haven't already subscribed to the channel, definitely go ahead and do so. We're 160 subscribers away from 25,000. Thank you all so much for the support so far. Let's keep the channel going. Let's keep going with the sub count and go on to our goal at 30,000. But let's try to hit 25,000 before the weekend. I appreciate all of you, and without further ado, let's hop right into our first slide. So the first one here is going to be K9 VS. Now this is projected to be one of the best decks in the format. This deck will struggle against Mitsurugi, especially against Mirakumo. That card's very good, and this deck does not want to be discarding cards, so it's definitely going to be something that is awkward for the deck. But I think this is going to be true with most situations in K9, where you are going to want to go ahead and stop the Lupus from hitting the board and then allowing your opponent to summon a Ripper, because that's going to be free advantage for your opponent and a negation. So that's something where you want to go ahead and DD Crow the Lupus once it hits the graveyard, or you can go ahead and Bell the Lupus. The other spot where you can Bell, though, is Rock of the Vanquisher. Of course, your opponent really needs the attributes. So let's say you go ahead and stop, like, the Rosin, and they go Link 1, add back Rosin. If you Bell that, you keep them off of another attribute, which is really important. So I do think that Rock of the Vanquisher here as a stop can be very important as well. If they don't see the K9 cards right away, and then they have the monster in the graveyard that they're trying to add back, you can also just DD Crow, which is even better, because then it's just, like, really gone, right? So it's really solid. If you're on Impulse, you definitely want to stop the Snow Devil. I think this is the most important. You won't be able to stop the Holy Sue because that's going to be the only card trying to summon, and there's nothing on board at that point, so that's something that you really want to consider. You can always Impulse the effect of Holy Sue on board, but if I have Ash especially, I'm only ever really stopping the Holy Sue if it's like turn 0, right? Because otherwise, if my opponent's starting, they go normal summon Rosin, I'm putting them on you don't have the extender, right, and just ashing the Rosin at that point, because they can get to any extender that they want to, you know, and that's something that's not going to be fantastic for you, right? So that's something you want to stop. If your opponent does go for Stake Your Soul immediately, I'm just stopping Stake Your Soul, of course, but Ash is very versatile in this matchup, and it's very good. You want to stop the Rosin if you can with, like, Ash, because they can't just, like, chain Borger, right? But if they do start with Stake Your Soul, hit that. If it's turn 0 and they're trying to use Holy Sue, I'm just ashing that. Ogreing the field spell, denying your opponent access to Snow Devil is really solid. Your opponent will search start off of the Mad Love, so this is a really good choke point to go ahead and just stop that immediately. You definitely want to go ahead and just, like, high roll your opponent when they summon Rosin. Valor Imperm onto Rosin is really good, but you can wait on Imperm till draw phase and just draw phase hit Rock, which is really solid because then you cut off one more access point for your opponent to summon to the board, especially if they don't already have Holy Sue and they're trying to get, like, Rosin out to the board. You can just cut off the access to Rock immediately with Imperm, and then your opponent's in a really weird spot where they want to be able to extend, but they really can't. The Dragon Tail deck, I talked about this in my tier list, it's really underwhelming, and I don't feel like it's very good, which is unfortunate because I was really looking forward to this deck, because it reminds me a lot of Kashtira, where you're putting up, like, really large guys, but they don't really do as much as, like, a Kashtira monster would, and it's, like, heavier investment. I don't love this. I don't think this is, like, that great. There is a very linear few lines that the deck is really able to do, and it's not all too impressive. The Rahu, you definitely want to stop with, like, Dominus Impulse or Ash, whichever is fine. This is definitely going to be the one that threatens you the most. But if your opponent is starting off with Lucius, they're going to be trying to get to Lucius. You just want to go ahead and stop this on summon. Valor Imperm, this is going to be the best one. You want to go ahead and just shut off. Your opponent will try to send the Water Dragon Tail to the graveyard and then try to add it back as well. This is something that you want to make sure that you were just cutting off immediately by either belling the fusion or just DD Crowing the Water Dragon Tail completely, because they can't get back to it immediately either. This is something that is going to be during either player's turn. It's very annoying, and if your opponent's trying to set up turn 1 and you can clear this, it's going to be very beneficial for you to clear this. Because again, the lines themselves aren't really that threatening and they're not really that crazy. And it's a very low to the ground deck. But stopping Rahu, Lucius, and then stopping the add back of the Water Dragon Tail is going to be really important for you. So in these slides, you're definitely noticing that Rock just isn't there. And I don't really think that card's that great right now. And I know it's usually like that's when the card's the best, but like I just don't even foresee myself having that card around. It just seems really bad right now. So that's just my opinion. Maybe it'll pick back up in popularity, but for now, I'm just like, I don't want to play that card. You know what's really good, and I'll talk about this in another video, is Fenrir. When your opponent's trying to play into your turn 0 and you have a Fenrir, it's really rough for them, you know? It really deters the want to do that. So that's something to keep in mind too. But that card's very, very strong right now. Dominance Impulse or Ash on Obedience School, of course. This card is just broken. Just stop that immediately. You do not want 3 bodies hitting the board for free. Belling Surprise is definitely just like fine. You can hit one of the synchros when they're trying to bring anything back to the board if you're in like a grind, and this is one of the more nuanced situations. But hitting Surprise is one of the better ways if you have another card with a Bell. Because if you have like Dark Ruler Bell, you probably just win the game on the spot, right? Because you go Dark Ruler, they surprise you, Bell it, you win the game. And then if you have like Bell Imperm, you could always like Imperm stop something, force them to try to reborn, and then Bell that. I think Bell and, right, because that's usually what some of these hand traps are. It's a Bell and Ogre and, right, like you need something else. But paired with the right card, I think this could be a very explosive card this format, especially for Yummy, because that deck is definitely going to have a lot of issues with board breakers. And I think with the more low impact hand traps like Bell, it's going to be really rough for the deck to play. You can definitely go ahead and negate Cupsy, which is fine because you're going to cut off the access to a spell card. But there's an asterisk on Snatchy for a reason. Now, you can Ogre Minion, which is fine. I think this is cool because you cut off the access to a Reborn, but they can surprise it back if they want. If your opponent, and this is something that nobody has told you yet, but this is really important to know. If your opponent is playing Yummy and they are going second, and they summon Snatchy and use the effect, and you stop it, or it resolves, they activate Minion, and then you Ogre it, they literally can't kill you. They can't. There's nothing big enough in that extra deck, and their monsters don't gain attack. They can't kill you. Like, for me right now, when I'm going first against this deck post-side, I'm putting in Cosmic Cyclone. The second they activate Minion, I just Cosmic it, and they auto-lose the game. Their bodies cannot get big enough. And I think that is crazy. That is something that you really should know. Because it's a rough one. It is a rough one for this deck. So we might see 2 Minion Index. We might see more copies of, like, Surprise. But this will be fixed once we get the new one. But for now, this is a really rough way for the deck to just kind of lose the game on the spot. Now, as for one of my favorite decks this format, it's going to be Canine Crystron. So you definitely want to start with the Lupus being banished or just negated, right? Not to let it come back to the board so they can summon Ripper. This is something that you want to consider because of the fact that, again, Ripper is a very crazy card and it's going to be in most people's deck list, and that's a card that you definitely want to stop. But if your opponent just goes and dumps the Smiger, you can just go ahead and get rid of that with DD Crow. That's perfectly fine. If they activate Smiger, I'm probably just going to go ahead and Ash it as well. I just don't want my opponent to be able to net any advantage. You could also just wait and Ash, like, Inclusion, but that also opens you up for your opponent to have, like, Solfador, and that can be pretty detrimental, so I'd rather not give my opponent the resource in the first place. You also can Ash the effect of the Tristalos Engrave when they try to blow up their Synchro to summon out 2 from deck, which is perfectly fine. I don't think that's horrible, but I think that this is one of those things where it's going to be a sequence of what happens first, right? Because usually, to get to the Crystron engine, they're either going ahead and using the Smiger, because what they're going to do, they're going to overlay into Riverstormer and then add Scrap Recycler. Recycler is going to dump Smiger. And so you can either stop the Riverstormer the Scrap Recycler, or just Ash the Smiger. And that's going to stop the crossover to the Crystron engine, and that's something that's really important to know. Riverstormer is like this deck's King of the Fairlamps. You want to stop this, and all your opponent's going to have is K9 cards. So that's something that you really want to consider. Of course, there's always going to be your opponent opening up something crazy, right, and just having full combo anyways. But if I start seeing my opponent try to go for Riverstormer, that's telling me they probably don't have Crystron cards, and you gotta stop this because their engine isn't going to do a whole lot if this does get stopped. The other one is you definitely want to go ahead and Ogre the Cluster. Very crazy card, something that you want to stop. This will cut off a lot of their grind game until they can get to another Eliskeltis, which will then allow them to go ahead and add back the cluster. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If it was a big help for you, definitely let me know down below in the comment section. I appreciate each and every one of you. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already subscribed. Definitely go ahead and check out my Twitter, Twitch, Discord, Instagram, and follow my TikTok down below in the description. I'm growing that one a lot right now, and it's really fun to post a lot of different TikToks of rulings and whatnot. So it is a good time. But if you guys want to check that out, definitely go and do so, and I'll check you all in the next video. Thank you.